Episode 43, Missoula Podcast. Welcome back, Brandon.
It's good to be here. 43.
Yeah.
Episode 43.
Your age.
Not yet.
Okay.
You're aging me.
Sorry.
You're not aging me. Dude, I'm pumped for this episode. We have in studio one of the original cast members from Yellowstone.
That's right. And don't you ever forget it.
Cowboy Josh. What was your name in the show?
Approximately 2.8 seconds of screen time. My name in the show? Okay, I'm typecasting myself a little bit. But it was Kip.
Kip.
Yeah, Rip's brother.
You look
See,
like
the problem
that.
with Rip is that his mom wasn't creative in naming him. So.
Yeah, what was that like growing up with Rip?
Oh, man. I mean, you think he's tough. What do they always say? You should see the other guy?
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
the other guy. Yeah.
So you were in one episode
One.
of Yellowstone.
Okay, 16 hours of being on set or whatever for an extra. You ever want to feel like you're nothing? Be an extra on a show.
Why did you think that that was something you wanted to do? Just for the experience of it?
Honestly, Adam
Mhm.
Skrock was he asked me to do it with him, and I figured why not? And you know, the best part about it was, and probably a place where we may go with this conversation, was how many people you can connect with.
Sure.
So like I'm there and I see people I haven't seen in a decade, you know, or I run into somebody that I've just met, or, you know, we relate our stories, or, I mean, you just get into all these conversations with so many cool people. I met a veteran who had done 3 tours in Afghanistan and been wounded in combat. And, you know, so we talked about like my grandfather and, you know, that whole line of things. And his whole goal was to just meet Kevin Costner once, you know? And so there was a point where I was going to get, so I'm totally laissez-faire about it, right? You go to this thing and people are like all about it. They're trying to angle themselves and position themselves to get in the best. And I'm like, I don't even care. Like, I'm just glad to be here, people, you know? And I got the opportunity to sit in this chair where Kevin Costner was going to come through and shake my hand. So this guy had told me, like, you know, an hour before, my whole, like, one of my goals in life is just to shake Kevin Costner's hand. So I'm sitting in this chair and I'm thinking, I can't stay in this seat. This is a veteran, man. He did 3 tours for us. Like, this is a big deal. So I said to him, hey, why don't we switch seats? And he was like, no, man, because he was kind of a rule follower. I mean, being in the military as long as he was
Sure.
a rule follower. He's like, no, they told you that you were going to do that. So I'm not, no, you stay there. And I was like, man, switch with me. No, I'm not going to do it. So we went back and forth for a little bit. Well, it just shows you how good, you know, maybe God is, because the guy went up to go to the bathroom and he was walking across, and character matters. So he's walking across to go to the bathroom. There's this black Suburban that's trying to move, and there's people that are totally oblivious to this Suburban. So he like stops everybody. He's like, hey, hold up, everybody. This Suburban's moving. So the Suburban backs up and the door opens and Kevin Costner gets out, and he says to the guy, this military guy, he says, hey man, I really appreciate you doing that. Nobody else, we were there for 5 minutes waiting for everybody to get out of the way, and nobody had done that. And why don't you tell me your name? And so he told him his name, and he's like, let's take a picture together. So he comes back from the bathroom. He's like, dude, I just met Kevin Costner.
No way.
And it was such a beautiful
That's awesome.
story. You know what I mean? Cause it's like, what a cool thing for him. And anyway, there was so many cool opportunities
really
there
cool.
to just connect with people. And
Did you shake Kevin's hand? Did it work out?
I did.
That scene?
He put his hand on my shoulder.
Ooh,
Which is even better.
wow.
I mean, is it? Yeah, we made eye contact.
That's awesome.
There was a moment. And then, but Jamie Dutton, now I shook his hand about 28 times.
Really?
Yeah. I told him to call me. Hey, call me. You know, we got some things
Was
to
he as
discuss.
slimy in real life as he is in the show?
No, that dude's legit.
Was he cool?
Oh, I like
He's a
that
cool
guy.
guy.
I like that guy as an actor.
Yeah.
But he's just a cool
That's
guy.
awesome.
Yeah. All that whole cast is pretty awesome. So
Did your kids think you were a bigger deal after you got off that? Or
no,
you're
not a
just-
chance.
You have to do way more than that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're pretty like, whatever.
Remember, was it season 3, episode 1?
Oh, come on. You're killing me right now.
What was it?
I thought you were like,
No,
I have 2 fans on my fan
yes.
page, my mom and
And me.
Brandon
No.
Smith.
I remember watching Yellowstone
And
and it
it's-
like came on. The season started and there you were. I was like, what?
For anybody that's paying attention out there, season 5, episode 1.
Season 5.
I still haven't seen it myself. So
So good.
So it was a That's amazing. Okay, well, take me back. before you were a big star
Yeah,
on a
right.
hit TV show. Where are you from? And how the heck did you make it to Missoula?
Well, I grew up in a mining town in northern Idaho, Mullen, Idaho, and lived there from the age of 3, 4 years old to till I was 14, and then we moved to Missoula my first semester of my freshman year in high school. So went from a town of 860-ish to a high school of over 1,200 students. So culture shock galore.
What were your folks doing in
Well,
Idaho, and then what moved them here?
yeah, so my mom was a librarian in Wallace. My dad was the head custodian at the school district, and my grandparents lived there. So the Jones clan basically homesteaded in northern Idaho in the late 1800s. In fact, we still have a homestead there that my aunt and uncle have made amazing. So the house, like there's a chalk drawing on the wall that says, established 1889 kind of thing. They built this house in the late 1800s and it still
Wow.
stands today, which is really cool history. But my dad and mom were stationed in Washington D.C. In the 70s for the military, and my grandparents got sick, and so they left kind of their life on the East Coast and moved home to take care of my grandparents in northern Idaho, which is what got us there. And then, small town life is tough. And I think there were some things that were happening with my family that my parents were like, we need a change. And so my dad got a job here in Missoula as a sales rep, and we moved.
Was that just because Missoula was the closest big city?
Yeah, and we had friends that had moved here
Okay.
that had started a business, and so they were good friends of his that we went to church with and stuff. And so it was just an opportunity to kind of get out
Mm-hmm.
and as you'll find throughout the theme of this conversation, faith is a big deal, obviously, but God just opened a lot of doors in Missoula for my family at that moment. Even just the house that we got and just how everything kind of came together in the right way. So,
What was that like as a teenager coming into the big city, big school?
well, for me, I was excited.
Mhm.
My oldest sister, was terrified. She was a junior. I mean,
Mhm.
moving in the middle of your junior year after having the entirety of your life in a class less than 12 people,
Yeah.
to move to a school with your class of 300 um, was, I can imagine for her, it was emotionally just very scary. For me, I was excited in part because I had a tough growing up years, a lot of fighting, a lot of bullying, a lot of things that, absolutely developed character in who I am and what I'm about today.
Were you on the
But
receiving end or the giving
yeah,
end
a
of the
lot
bullying?
of
You were
mostly
bullied.
receiving. Yeah.
Okay.
Why do you think that was? What was it about you?
Well,
that,
I think,
or was it
in
just tough town as
it's a
well?
tough town.
Yeah.
And I think kids are kids and like you're trying to get position all the time to kind of assert who you are and what you're about. And the most successful times in my life where I didn't have any issues was like during sports seasons, because I wasn't great. In fact, there's a whole story there. But in football, I was a pretty good football player. And so during football season, I didn't get bullied because they needed me on the team. And, so I was like one of the guys. And then, but it certainly drove me as a person. Like, so what I wanted to do is prove myself, which is good and bad in a lot of ways, right? You get overly competitive and kind of crazy competitive at times. You lose your mind. But I didn't have any brothers or sisters and no family. And so it's like you go to school and somebody says something and you don't have anybody to back you up, and so then it turns into sometimes a fight,
Sure.
frequently a fight. So
So you were ready to be in Missoula.
I was ready. Yeah, actually, funny story. I was in Big Sky the very first week I was at Big Sky, or second week, I'm sorry. And I had been walking through the hallways by myself and kind of backpack, head down, kind of just getting to my next class. And this kid jumps up one day and he pushes me into the lockers. And I'm thinking, oh, crap, this followed me. Here we go. So I take my backpack off, I set it down and like turn to fight him. That's what I think is going to happen, And he actually said, "Hey, man, I've watched you walk by my locker every day for 2 weeks and like you're all by yourself. Like, why don't you come sit with us?" I mean, it was like a life-changing
Wow.
moment, you know, and we're still friends to this day, but it was cool.
It's really
So I
cool.
thought it was going to be a fight, and then it was like this group of people became my best friends, you
That's
know,
awesome.
for a long time. I mean, Lang and I are still very good buddies. So, yeah, it was
That's
funny. I
incredible.
was like, maybe the approach, you know, but I get it. You're
Yeah,
a teenage
that's
boy.
how guys are.
But I mean, how often does that happen? How many
Yeah.
times do you see a kid like approach another kid like that and be like, "Hey, I noticed about
That's
you."
kind of a weird way to introduce yourself. Just
yeah,
shoving a kid
yeah.
into a
But he was
locker.
observing. He was watching.
He was
you.
paying
That's
attention.
awesome.
Yeah,
I know Big Sky is a special place in your heart, and we'll come back to the Big Sky
sure.
in a minute. Post high school, where'd you go? What'd you do?
So I went to U of M,
Okay.
studied wildlife biology, and I got a math minor, history minor. Yeah, using all that
I was gonna
today.
say, Why wildlife? Wildlife biology? Is that what you said?
I'll tell you why. Because I was interested in being a wildlife biologist and a pilot in Alaska. So that was my ultimate goal. Is I wanted to fly as a biologist in Alaska at the time. Lord had a different plan for my life, and so that was fun in the process of learning about that plan. But the other reason I picked wildlife biology is I like to I like to challenge myself, and it was the fourth rated school in the country at the time for wildlife bio, and I was like, I mean, I had changed my major like 6 times my freshman year of college, and so I finally settled on it, and then I finished it out. But
Where did you divert in a different direction? Did you graduate from that
Yep.
program? And you're like, okay, I'm looking for jobs, or were you going to?
I did. I graduated. Well, I knew. So my junior year of college, I kind of got an inkling that I was never going to be a wildlife biologist, and I'll tell you why. Because there was an opportunity for a bear study, a grizzly bear study in the Selway Bitterroot Wilderness area.
That sounds like the holy grail of
Yes,
wildlife biology.
right. So they put this application process out, and they're like, hey, you know, we need able-bodied people that understand what it's like to be isolated in the wilderness. You know, you'd go to these certain drop points, and
This sounds horrible.
well,
Out.
I'm a pretty social person,
No.
right? So like, but I applied, and because I was from Montana and I had a lot of experience backpacking, and like, you know, I got one of the spots, you know, they offered it to me, and as I began to think about it, it was 2.5 months of the summer, you know, I was involved with my buddies. We played softball. Like, I'm starting to think, gosh, I'm a pretty social person. Being isolated in the mountains by myself for 2 months is somebody's dream, but I'm not sure it would be good for me. I don't know that this is really my wheelhouse. And so I basically said no. And my advisor at the time was like, you turn this down, you're probably never going to get a job in wildlife. And I was like, harsh,
Really?
but okay.
Wow.
Well, I don't feel like I can. Him and I didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, so that wasn't a surprise that he said that to me. But
Steven, could you do it? 2.5 months?
No way.
I mean, you're an outdoors mountain.
I'm the similar
Tune.
cloth as
No way.
Josh. I love people too much. That would be really hard.
if I was out there with like 2 other people,
Right.
well, then that's a whole different story.
Right.
But
Yeah,
to be
but-
isolated like that, it just wasn't my cup of tea. And to be honest with you, I don't even know. I mean, you know, that's 20 plus years ago, so my memory of that can be often flawed as well. But that's like
It was 2 days.
the
It was a
Yeah, it
2-day
was-
trip.
No, it was definitely for the summer. But yeah, it was a 3-day overnight, you know,
Like
With
I'm
the
gonna-
class.
in a lodge.
Chick-fil-A was catering.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, that's the point where I was like, man, maybe wildlife isn't my thing. So I started pursuing the flight thing, because I was like, well, then I can get my wildlife degree. I can be in Alaska. I'll have that'll help me, you know, kind of.
Mhm.
And then I want to be a pilot, and I'd always wanted to be a pilot. You know, I grew up in Lewis Gossett Jr., you know, Chaffee, who just passed away actually, with Iron Eagle. And the same year, a movie that you may or may not have heard of came out, and it's called, let's see here, it's Top Gun.
Okay, yeah.
So Top Gun came out, Iron Eagle came out. Like, those were movies I
Right.
would of my youth, you know, and so I always wanted to be a pilot, you know, just because of that.
course.
So then I was like, oh yeah, I can be a pilot. So I was actually working at the airport at the time, and I started taking my get my pilot's license. And that's, that really was, from my senior year of college through after college was over for me. I continued to pursue that. So, but then my wife and I were dating at the time, and there was a lot going on in our relationship and stuff. And I was just really selfish person, I think, at that time too. And she was very gracious to allow me to pursue my dreams. She always wanted to be a nurse, and so that's what she was doing. But I was spending a lot of money on flying, and I really wasn't even considering where she was at or who she was or what she wanted to do or what we wanted to do together.
Sure.
And I just was spending all this money like I had it, for one thing. And then the other thing is that it was her money too, like probably more her money. Cause I just, anyway, I ended up spending like $250 on a test that I failed, a flying test that I failed. And, and it was at that point where it was kind of the beginning of a series of failures for me in my life that I think really God was just trying to get a hold of me. And I was just doing my own thing, kind of pursuing my own life and just really selfish, And so really humbled in that process of just like, you think, but you don't kind of thing. And so, anyway, we started volunteering with Youth for Christ at that. We were in that process during that season, and God just said, "This isn't what I have for you." So I actually walked away from flying. I got my license, but I haven't flown since. So that was in 2001, which is crazy to think of. Like, I did all that work to get a pilot's license, and then
wow.
But I just felt like that's what God was asking me to do, just to walk away from it. So I did. And then it was it was interesting, like 2 years of like trying to figure out, okay, now who am I going to be? What am I going to do? Like everything that I had kind of set up for my life or thought, I wanted to do, the Lord was like, I got something different. And so I just really pressed into my relationship with him and my relationship with my wife. We got married, and, she was in nursing school. So my job was really secure, allowed us to put her through school. And then, and I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot here,
were you still working at the airport?
I was,
at that time?
Yeah. I worked there for almost 7 years.
Okay.
So, and then, she was in nursing school. She graduated. She was working at St. Pat's, and we were volunteering with Youth for Christ as, like raft trips and campus life clubs. I did the club at Big Sky, with Josh Yakos and Brent and a couple other people, and really cool opportunities just invest and be around youth. And anyway, long story short, Brent Yakos got offered a position with a church here in town. And so Brent was short a director, a campus life guy. And so at his board meeting, it's like 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. He says to his board, well, the guy I'd really like to hire is Josh, but there's no way I'll be able to get him out of the work that he's doing now, because I was like kind of in management, so I was grooming to become like a vice president of the company out there. And he's like, there's no way I can pull him away. That's a great career. What am I going to offer him? Hey, you got to raise your support. It's not very much money, and you're going to have to work, a lot. So
a lot of nights and weekends.
Yeah. But the board meetings actually says my name in it, at that time. Well, at that time I was working for Neptune Aviation. We had lost a tanker, in a fire. And so they had issued kind of company-wide, layoff notices, and it was Monday morning at 10, they were giving me my layoff notice for this deal. Right. And so think about the coordination, like God just was using all these circumstances to put me in a position where I could come on staff with Youth for Christ. And it was that week that I found out there was an opening, and I called Brent, and then we had a very extravagant lunch at Wendy's, and he offered me the job. And I don't know, man, it was just kind of I went home, we talked about it, prayed about it, and then stepped into it. So I've been at Youth for Christ.
So your nurse wife has been carrying you
absolutely
ever since.
Number one volunteer, number one supporter.
That's awesome.
It's like when I have lunch with her, I'm like, I'm having a donor lunch right now.
Do you take her to Wendy's?
Yeah, I take her to Wendy's. Absolutely.
I want to jump into more of that.
Yeah.
Let's hit him with the Power 5 questions right now.
So Josh, you came to Montana from Mullen, Idaho.
Yeah.
You're a freshman in high school. What is your first initial memory of Missoula, Montana?
My first initial memory was walking out of the doors of the counseling offices and into the hallway of Big Sky. Remember, I came from a town of 860-ish to a high school of 1,200. So like opening the door to a complete city block of lockers will forever be emblazoned in my brain as like, holy cow, this is not Kansas anymore. In fact, it's not Idaho. My sister immediately burst into tears. So it was a marker moment, of wow, we're not in the same place or doing the same thing. So,
Like growing up in Mullen was like going to 50,000 Silver Dollar. Like
that was a road
highlight.
trip.
That was a road trip. It was fun. Family day out.
That was great.
It's awesome.
There,
Wallace.
Let me just say this. I would love to move to a small town with my kids and live there and have them grow up in a small town. As much as it was character developing and the different issues and struggles and difficulties that I had in that town, it was such a huge, fun, amazing environment to grow up in. It's just, small towns. There's just something about small town living that you just can't replace. Mm-hmm. And I will forever be somebody that grew up there. It's funny because like if I go over there and go, hang out somewhere, they're like, oh, where are you from? Well, I grew up in Mullen. I mean, immediately there's street cred, because they're like, oh yeah, that's in the 80s. Oh yeah, that's rough, kind of thing. So, but I mean, my classmates, there's still people I run into today. It's like you're always connected.
Sure.
So
it is kind of, they ask what your last name is and then the connection goes.
And the thing is like you're about you at that time. So like even the kids that were picking on me and bullying me, they had a whole backstory that I didn't even think about. Right. And so now I'm in youth ministry. I'm working with kids that have come from really tough homes, whether it's abuse or neglect or whatever. And they lash out, cause it's like, they don't know who they are and they don't know what they're about. And so they lash out at other people. And so it was really humbling to realize that the first time. Like, I mean, working in youth ministry and I'm working with a kid that's a massive bully. And I'm thinking about the kid that bullied me. And I'm thinking, I know this kid's backstory. Holy cow. Like, this is rough. And I have compassion for him and empathy for him, and I want to help him and mentor him. And then I'm thinking about the guy that bullied me. And so we actually connected 20 years later. Mm-hmm. And it was just beautiful. We were able to he apologized to me. I mean, it validated a lot of things that I didn't realize were happening. But anyway, long story short, I know we're talking about a lot of stuff.
No, that's great. Outside of Wendy's, what's your favorite restaurant in Missoula?
Oh, favorite restaurant in Missoula. Yeah, that's a good one. Depends, right? So I really love Chow Mambo. I really love Montana Club, El Caz. I mean, Mexican food is like legit. So I don't know. There's categories. You can't just like, what's your favorite movie? That's not even fair.
Top Gun.
Oh, the new Maverick's pretty good.
So date night, you're going to dinner with your wife. Where are you going?
Chow Mambo.
Chow Mambo.
Got it.
How about coffee shop? Favorite coffee shop in Missoula?
I like the smaller coffee shops. Generally, I like any coffee that somebody pays for me. So
it's a tight budget.
Just kidding. I like good Americano. I like Floco. Probably Loose Caboose. Top
So the small, quick drive-throughs, not the big brick and mortar.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got a time schedule you got to keep to.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
What's the weirdest thing about Missoula to you?
Well, growing up in a town where it's kind of like defined by like we're a mining town, right? Missoula to me is such a interesting collision of cultures. So there's a lot of subcultures in Missoula. You couldn't define Missoula as this kind of town, right? But being a part of a lot of those different kind of subcultures is super fun. Like you just get to see a different, diverse group of people that have been raised maybe differently, and it's all come together. So I think that's probably the weirdest thing is just the immense amount of subcultures that exist, and you can't really define. There's no real definition for Missoula,
Yeah, agreed. Agreed.
Which is an interesting way to think about it,
Missoula has multiple subcultures and also multiple zip codes. So I'm more curious what zip code you live in.
Well, now currently I live in 59803.
Which is
I was in 59804, but Hi.
5903 is
You moved
the
up.
best
You
zip
moved,
code.
literally moved up on the hill.
I
Missoula.
moved up one digit.
We're glad to
Yeah.
have you.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Man.
What do you love the most about Missoula?
I love the communities that I'm a part of, you know, whether it's Youth for Christ, which is its own interesting collaboration of people that support it and are a part of it. And like through the years, how many people that ministry has touched, or it's my church community, my ski patrol community, my coaching community, my friend community, you know. I just love that people are so you know, if you're ever in a position, I would hope that people would be in a position that I get to be in and steward as the director of Youth for Christ, because it's very, I mean, I don't just say this to say that. It's super humbling for people to say, I believe in what you do, to the point where I'm actually going to write you a check and say, go do it. Right. And that to me is like, you see it across the board with Missoula, like very generous people that are about trying to just do what they can to help. You know, and maybe they're not the ones that are actually doing it themselves, but they're just working hard to just help people. And I love watching that. And yeah, so.
Amazing. Is there a specific book that you've given the most as a gift, or that has had a profound impact on you?
Yeah. Well, I read a lot, actually, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah. I know it wouldn't seem like it. Come on now.
I would have thought the same thing.
I mean, you're a movie star. Why would you need to read? Let somebody read for you.
Exactly.
I read scripts. No. I read a lot. I really love historical nonfiction, you know, stories loosely based on the truth. I also love. So fiction, nonfiction.
Yellowstone.
Yeah. I don't know. That's super nonfiction. Oh wait, no.
Yeah, I get it. I have the same problem.
I don't know
It's super fiction.
What
It's
is-
made up.
Yes.
Okay.
I have the
Yellowstone is not a
same
real
problem.
place. It's not a
So
real
it's
thing.
nonfiction. Okay, got it.
Yeah, it's fiction. But my favorite book just for life and for is by a guy that I really respect in both his theology and his approach to life and ministry, and that's Eugene Peterson. And it's a long obedience in the same direction, which I just recently found out almost didn't get published. But it is, I try to read that book at least once a year. And basically it's Eugene, it's a devotional type book, but it's about the Jewish peoples going to the temple annually. And it's the Song of Ascents in the Psalms. I love the title, because the title to me is all about what we should be really pursuing, not only in our own faith walks, but really in life, just being really obedient and convicted and, you know, moving in the same direction, you know, that God's called us to.
Say it again. What was the title?
A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. So excellent book, excellent Devo book. Just, you know, it's from I think it was published in 92 or 88.
Eugene Peterson, Montanan, right?
Yeah. Montanan.
Shout out to him.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Josh, you alluded in one of your answers there to the multiple hats you wear, the multiple communities you're a part of.
Yeah.
How do you answer the question when somebody first meets you and they ask, so what do you do? So where have
That's
you
a
ended
great
up
question.
here in 2024? Who are you?
Well, what would
do
you say
What do you do?
do here? Exactly. Anyway, well, I take the TPS reports. I mean, I don't know. I think that's hard to define, right? I would say what I do is that I try to be a good husband and father first, and then pursue the call that God's placed in my life. And right now that's to steward the ministry of Youth for Christ as the director, but that could change, you know, as with anything in life. I think, so for me, I think what I do is try to be as involved with people as I can be and hear their stories. I think people's stories are fascinating and amazing, and try to relate. And I don't know. I mean, what I do for work is I'm a Youth for Christ executive director that is trying to run a community center and lead a staff as well as I can, and create transformational opportunities in authentic Christ sharing relationships with kids. That's what I do. But I think that extends to a lot of different, hopefully, areas of my life as well.
You coach football.
I do coach football.
Coach football at Big Sky.
Yeah.
And ski patrol.
I do.
I mean, so you're very active in the community and building relationships with next
Right.
generation.
I was telling somebody the other day, I feel like everything I've done for 20 plus years, it's crazy.
It's great.
So
As you wow, let's try that again. As you
you can edit, right?
Exactly. As you transitioned out of working for Neptune into this ministry call at Youth for Christ, what was like the huge obstacle that you're like, oh my word, this is crazy. I can't believe I'm doing this. And how did you work through that?
Yeah. I think balance in life was what was the hardest thing for me. Cause I think, you realize, you think who you are and how selfish you are and all the things. And then you get married and you're like, oh man, I'm way more selfish than I thought I was. And then you have a kid and you're like, holy cow, I'm like the most selfish person in the entire universe. Right. And then you start to learn through that process of, okay, how do I still maintain the dreams and hopes and the things that I want, but also facilitate these other folks that I've been placed in, to lead, in my home. And I think we spent a lot of time. I think early on, it was hard for me to find that balance of balanced life, as pursuing. The other thing is that, to be honest, like my kids and my wife specifically are my first ministry. So to not neglect that, I think, is a big deal. And I think you get into like a ministry or vocationally and you're like, oh, I got to spend all this time with all these people. And then you forget what's going on. So again, I would just say balance was probably the most difficult thing. And then fundraising. I love it and I hate it. Like it's the greatest blessing in the world. And it's also like one of those things where you're like, I call it a faith-based salary. You just trust, because I get tired of asking people. But people are very open to it even still to this day. I mean, 20 plus years later. And it's a challenge, because I get it. I'm in the same boat. When you think about your personal finances, you think about inflation, you think about where's the future going and the uncertainties and all the things. I mean, I experienced those exact same things in my home. So those are the two, I would say, biggest challenges. But wise men who I try to listen to have told me for years, don't ever worry yourself with the financials. Like worry yourself about seeking him and like being about today. And so, it translates to my coaching, like be where your feet are is a new phrase that a lot of coaches are using, but it's absolutely true. Like be present. I think in a world where we have phones and all this stuff, it's hard to be present. And so be present to today and just do everything you can do in today to the call that God's placed in your life. And, tomorrow will take care of itself, kind of thing. So I don't know, there's some good principles there that I've hopefully tried to apply and do so correctly and incorrectly. And,
you probably have some incredible highlights, and I don't want to say success stories, but transformational stories working with youth for 20 years.
Yeah.
What are some of those things that you've seen? And then on the other end of that, how do you deal with the heartbreak of pouring all this energy and investment into kids and maybe nothing changes? And walk me through that.
Well, I mean, those are tough questions, right? I think we live in a very results driven culture and society. So like, what did you do this last year? How many kids did you work with? How many meals did you serve? How many kids prayed a prayer? I mean, like all these different things. And I think, scripturally speaking, I don't know that I ever see Jesus do or ask those same questions. He doesn't like.
So that was a bad question, is what you're saying?
No. I actually, I'm getting to the point, because it's really important for as far as like perspective and encouragement, right? Yeah. Because I think when you're thinking about that all the time, there's lots of reasons to be frustrated with that. And you think about the lives and the hours that you spend in investing in somebody, and then nothing changes. And you look at it, I think culture views it as a waste of time. And frankly, I don't ever see that ever in the Gospels, ever. It's never a waste of time. Like, and you don't know, right? So there's the parable of the sower. You kind of press into the parable of the sower, right? You try to spread the seed, and it falls on all kinds of different ground and you don't control it. And even more so, like even when the seed takes, like it's not just me that does the work, like God does the work. They might go to a different church or a different youth group or get to a different mentor or whatever. And you just planted the seed, and like Apollos waters it and Paul, tends to it. But God is what gives the increase. And I think so allowing yourself to say, I don't own this. This isn't mine. I'm stewarding it and I want to steward it well, but I don't own it. So like even in the lives of people, it's the same concept.
It's really good. I even look back at my own life, and you don't even realize in the moment that you were being influenced or mentored by that teacher, that coach, that individual.
Yeah.
And then years later, look back and like, wow, I'm who I am because they made a significant impact on me. I didn't even realize it, but
right.
They planted that seed years ago, and here we are.
It's my favorite thing because, again, I talk about the bear study, and I'm like, maybe I remember that differently. I mean, I think we were all better in high school than we actually were.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
At athletics, at academics, at being a good friend. Much better looking. Yes. So, I mean, I think we have this history in our mind that like, this is how it went. But my favorite thing is when somebody comes in and they tell me about their life and how like I had some aspect of it and I don't even remember it. Yeah. Right. And what a blessing that is. Or people that come in and I remember really well and they struggled and they come in 20 years later and they're like, hey, I mean, this happens not all the time or every day, but it happens relatively, on a regular basis in the last 5 years. And I love that because I think it's a long obedience in the same direction. It's like, just be consistent and do the things that you're called to do today and allow God to move in 20 years, kind of thing.
I can hear it now. In 20 years, Josh is on a podcast and he's like, well, back in the day, I was wrestling grizzly bears. I was in this, they put me in this arena for college.
Have you ever seen Legends of the Fall? That was a story about my life.
That was me in high school.
I literally died.
Like Brad Pitt a little bit.
Brad Pitt, come on. Brad's Pitts.
What a bad joke.
That was a good one.
That was good. No, yeah. And Stephen asked a good question. What does it look like on the other side when you don't see the life change? If it's okay to go there, I know this last year for you has been some life learning.
Yeah.
You've walked through some heartache. Can you walk us through kind of this last year and some of the lessons you've learned and taken away?
Sure. Boy, that's a good question. I think, there's been a lot that's happened this year that could be a distraction to, kind of what God has called. I think there's lots of reasons to be angry and to blame God in your life, lots of reasons. Every day we can come up with stuff. I always say opportunities, not obstacles, because I think that's what God presents to us is opportunities through obstacles. Right. And so it's hard though. There's a Mercy Me song about the singer is singing this. He writes a song about how he stands on the stage and he basically sells hope, every night. But yet he stand up there and he's like, I don't know if I believe this myself. I mean, there's certainly moments of those things in the last year, when you do a wedding and, just a short time later, you do a funeral for the same person, those are hard questions to answer, when human nature takes over and disrupts life, and good friends do things that is like, those are hard moments, I think. So for me, I think the lessons learned is it's not, we overcomplicate it and we overthink it, and so I think the simplicity of what God, again, I go back to this because maybe I'm just a simple mind, but I think God gives us such a gift in his word to press into it for every day. Like his mercies are new every morning. So like the Bible is just so applicable in all circumstances. I think I've learned that even at a higher level this last year, just like God is just so great and gracious to give us that gift, to say, hey, I got you. I'm with you in this, and it's not going to make it easier and it's not going to solve the problems, but
Is it difficult? Is it difficult to be grateful for the last year, this last season of life?
Boy, I think it makes me more grateful.
Doesn't?
I think it makes me grateful just for life, and I don't know. That's a great question because I think for me, again, I don't want to put out like this facade, like I'm, whatever, but I think gratitude is such a missing component in our lives on a daily. Like, I think we're grateful, somebody sends, like for me, somebody sends a check and you're like, oh, I'm grateful. Right. But how about just like the opportunity to wake up and see the sunrise? I mean, the Lord is present in our lives and to give us life and liberty like we have it in this country. And we have a lot to complain about. Lots going on. We can always find the reasons to be upset, but I don't know. I mean, I just feel like maybe in light of what's happened even this last year and the different circumstances and set of circumstances, I feel like I'm more grateful. I just feel really blessed to have the life I have and again, I think it's even more kind of, I don't know if challenging is the right word, because it's like, okay, I want to steward this really well, and I don't always do it well. I don't always steward it well. I don't always handle relationships well. I don't always handle circumstances well, but I think hitting reset, every day is a big deal.
It's a blessing.
Yeah. So,
well, what's next for you, for Youth for Christ? What are you excited about? What are you passionate about that is getting you fired up in the morning?
Yeah. I mean, this conversation could go a long time, right? Well, for Youth for Christ specifically, we own the City Life building and we're certainly have stepped out in faith in this capital campaign, which is all about fundraising and pitching the vision of who and what we can do with that kind of resource for the next 100 years, as an organization. So that's the biggest goal for me. I think work-wise is just to get our building paid for so that those resources can be used to train, empower, and send people into the communities around us, to invest in the lives of kids. And so working on that, I'm not that guy. I'm not a capital campaign guy. I'm really not a great fundraiser, to be honest with you. So again, just kind of relying on the Lord for that.
You should marry a nurse.
Yeah, right. It's good for me, but yeah, she's amazing. My wife is an amazing person, just in so many ways. That could be a whole podcast. In fact, if you ever want to invite me back just to talk about my wife, I could do that.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. When's your anniversary? We'll have you back.
My anniversary is July 14th. It'll be 23 years this year. And we met in high school. So it's crazy. So what else is next?
She pushed him into a locker. Said, I've been watching you the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Actually, she told her friend when she was a freshman and didn't even know me. I didn't even know she existed. She told her friend, I'm going to marry that guy. So there's something to be said for that target. I don't know. Huh? Maybe I should feel a certain way about that. I don't know. Makes me a little suspicious.
Well, yeah, man, I know we're running up against the clock here. So just want to say thank you as a fellow coach. I know all the effort that you put in investing not only in the football, but into those young boys, young men, and then just the impact that the organization that you head up is having in our community. There's some hurting kids. There's some great kids. There's some challenges, but we appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah.
And what's the title of that book again? Along
Obedience in the Same Direction.
Keep going, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I just appreciate you. I'm so proud of you. I know you carry a lot of weight and you carry it well. And you're just an inspiration. Every time I see you, you are up and you're usually dealing with something.
Yeah, well,
and you do it well. Last question. Any big blockbusters coming up that you're starring in, or any red carpets?
Great question. I can't reveal because, you signed NDAs.
Do you even know what an NDA is? Or have you just heard that term thrown out?
Ouch. I read good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, Joe. Truly.
What's up, Missoula? This is Nick Balla, producer of the Missoula podcast. We truly appreciate you hanging out with us as we dive into the stories that make our city special. If you could do us a quick favor and follow the show wherever you are listening, whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Maybe you're watching on YouTube, so hit that little subscribe button. It really helps us out. Head on over to www.themissoulapodcast.com for more information, and we'll see you next week.